Hello. Today I'm going to toss in some more tips on writing your college application essay that I didn't get to in my last show. And one of them is you might think of doing something a little offbeat but not too gimmicky. And I'm thinking about a student whose essay I read because I'm a judge for the Shoreline Arts Alliance here in Guilford. And what she did, which really worked, was she took the poem of T.S. Eliot's J. Alfred Prufrock, "Let us go, you and I, where the evening meets the sky." Oh, I hope I've got it right. Anyway, she took that and she used it as a satire on the whole college application process. And she pulled it off, which is tricky, but it definitely worked. So if you have an idea like that, at least try it out. You know, it's worth writing one draft of it. Now, here's another tip, which is don't come across as too swaddled in comfort. This is the sort of thing that wouldn't occur to you, but occurs a lot to the people who are reading college application essays, because so many students today have had tremendous advantages, and this is particularly true for the ones who are applying to competitive colleges. They have had all sorts of lessons and tutoring and everything that comes along. What happens is that it makes it sound as if everything has been spoon-fed to them. They've never had to get out and hustle. And it's hard to make yourself sound like a genuine person who hasn't had an easy ride in life. And that's the kind of person that they're looking for in colleges, because once you get to college, you are on your own. And a lot of times, these swaddled students, have a rough go of it. So I would say to think about that. Now, along those lines, I'm going to talk about a student who wrote a wonderful essay, and it actually wasn't a college application essay. He was in college, and he didn't even write this for a school assignment. He wrote it on his own because he wanted to set down what happened to him. And here's what happened to him. And before I tell you the story, I'm going to say that what it brings back is look to your family, because as any novelist will tell you, the best stories come from family. And his story was one of his father was a house husband who was there all the time and had such a vital part in raising him. A Harvard-educated house husband, but a house husband nonetheless. And then when he was 13, his father died. And of course, it was very painful. He wanted to honor his father, and he wrote about how much time his dad spent with him, reading to him, playing with him, teaching him things, and how much that meant. But what was also interesting was the way his father died, in bed, at home, with his children around him, his wife around him, and then instead of going the commercial route and having the funeral parlor and the viewing of the body, etc., what they did was that they had a friend who was practiced in this area who came and cleaned and prepared the body. And then this boy at 13, along with his stepbrothers, carried the body downstairs of the house, and they took it to the church. Once again, it was a very personal service, and he describes how their dog, Cora, stood next to the casket and what that meant to everybody who knew about the relationship of the father and the dog. Then they took the body from D.C. to New Jersey, where it was put in the grave. That also was not your regular approach to it, because what they did is they put it in the back of a pickup truck, and the boys took it to New Jersey. So he wrote about that, and what we saw was the portrait of a family. He finished the essay by describing going back to New Jersey now that he's a college student and going back to the grave. So what you have is you have a picture of this person who was sensitive enough to know what to put in this essay, but who also had a tone of optimism about it, so that you got this feeling of, oh gee, that this was a wonderful relationship, and in many ways this funeral was a celebration of the father's life. And it also said something about the family, which is what college admissions people are looking for in these essays, because they know that the apple doesn't fall very far from the tree. And so they're very curious about the kind of family that you came from. Okay, now I'd like to talk to parents. When I was talking the other day, Joe Goldberg, who's been involved extensively with education here in Guilford, said, well, what advice would you give to parents? And I thought, oh, the parents. Then I realized I was one of those parents. I was not a helicopter parent. I was more like a stealth fighter parent, that I would, let the kids do their thing, benign neglect. And then all of a sudden I realized something was really important. And that's the way I was with the college application process. So I've learned a few things, not just as a writing coach to scores of high school kids, but right there on the home front. And I would say that one thing a parent should consider is, well, first of all, it's what my daughter had said to me when she was only 8 years old. And she said, Mom, you should go to Bible school. And I said, what's Bible school? She said, I'll do what you want if you pay me. Now, I'm not saying you should bribe your kids, but it is a good idea to get them through this essay writing business, to think about carrots, the keys to the car, things, a weekend away, something like that, so that they feel that there's something at the end of it that is good for them. I would say also there are two approaches you might use, and I used one on one child and one on another. One approach is to tell them to write their essay to the college they'd most like to go to. Now, with my daughter Sarah, I asked her anywhere in the world, where did she want to go to? And she said, the University of Sydney in Australia. And so, having said that she could go anywhere, we had to go through the whole process of applying there. And she was going to go. Fortunately, the University of Michigan accepted her, and it turned out to be a very good choice for her and closer to home. However, it got her galvanized to write her college application essay. When this was all over, I said, why the University of Sydney? I should have asked it first, but anyway, and she said, because they have such hot guys on their website. Now, here's another approach you can use, which is to look at the reach schools that your son or daughter is thinking about. Those schools that are very tough, and it's going to take a lot of luck to get your child in. And pick the toughest of your reach schools, Harvard, Yale, Princeton, whatever, MIT, and tell them to write their essay for that school. What happens is that if the child isn't too intimidated, what they can do is that they pitch their essay to that level. They make sure that they use their best thoughts, their best words, their best anecdotes, and they pull it together better. You'll find that that's one approach that often works very well. Now, parents often ask me about, is it a good idea to use a writing coach or to use a college application counselor? Yes, it can be. I would say, pick somebody that you're comfortable with and you think that your son or daughter is going to be comfortable with. You can also go on the internet. On the internet, there's a tremendous amount of good advice. But when it comes to writing the essay, here's the problem, is that the people on the internet, maybe you're in California and you're in Maine, and they don't really know your student. So what happens is they write a very smooth, proficient essay, and that's the problem, is that often they do a lot of the writing, and it doesn't come across as really your particular student. And another problem with it is that the college admissions people can smell that. And if they have real questions, they often call the school guidance counselor and talk to them and say, does this sound like the student? So you have to watch out for that. With college counselors, what I would say is people are often intimidated by they just don't have the money to do the whole process. And maybe they don't need the whole process. Maybe you and your student are very good at filling out the forms. Watch, I said you and your student. Let's hope it's your student. And so you don't need advice along those lines, but you may need advice about something else, about finances, which is a tricky business. So you can save yourself a lot of time, and you can talk to a counselor about just approaching that one particular part of the application process. All right, so now we get to revision and revising the essay. And here again, I would say my daughter Sarah would tell her friends at school who would come to me, and she would say, don't show my mom anything you write. She'll make you rewrite it. And that's absolutely true. You'll find professional writers think nothing of doing 5 drafts of something, and 20 drafts is not out of the question. So you have to leave yourself enough time to be able to revise your essay. That's the time when you stand back and first do the basic editing. You say to yourself, does this sound like me? Are my stories interesting and intriguing? Have I used good transitional sentences? How about my opening sentence? Is it a grabber? What about the closing paragraph? Is it strong? Is that last line one that they'll remember? So you want to go through that process, and then you get to the point where you look at it for spelling and grammar. Don't get so fixated on that early on, nor should you get fixated on how long your essay is. Don't go wild, but you can trim it at the end. It's better to overwrite, and it's better not to worry too much about spelling and punctuation while you're in the process of writing it. So my final word on all of this is that you are going to be so much happier, parent and child, when this is over. And you'll be particularly happy if you get it done before Thanksgiving, before the holidays set in and you have all that craziness to deal with too. So just think of the bird on Thanksgiving and how delicious it's going to taste. Thank you.